able to tune in and watch via that YouTube stream if they would like. Oh, give me one sec. Okay. All right, that should be going. I need to read through our hearing script. This basically is just going to cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll get started. So this is the May 25th, 2022 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220076. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence of testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony or evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. Anyone from the public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. If the zoning plans examiner does join us here today, I'll give him an opportunity to provide any testimony that he would like. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony or argument that was offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. So for our purposes here today, I will give, is it okay if I go with Adam? I'm just going to keep butchering your name otherwise.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, Adam and Ms. Hagan, an opportunity to tell me about the project, any information you think is important for me to make my decision and why you think this particular project is appropriate. And you can orient that presentation however you'd like. It can be one or both of you. It really doesn't matter. I'll then turn to Mr. Puri. Mr. Puri, I'll give you an opportunity to weigh in or to ask any questions or to provide any testimony that you would like. I will then go back to the applicant and give them an opportunity to respond to any of your comments or questions, and then allow them to make any closing statements, and then that'll be it. I'll close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. If there's some defect with the tech that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with the hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Mr. Puri, I assume you did want to provide some testimony at this hearing? And
my testimony
would just before we get to that, if you do want to provide any testimony, I do ask that cameras be activated during that time. You don't have to do it for any other part of the hearing other than when you're testifying if you wouldn't like to. I just like to give people a heads up to let them know that they will be on camera in the near future, just so they're prepared for that. But I also need to swear in all of our witnesses, and I'll need you to be on camera for that as well. And so I'm gonna do that now. If you intend on providing any testimony here at all, you need to be sworn in. And so I'll need everyone to take themselves off mute. And again, Mr. Puri, if you can activate your camera. I need everyone to raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Who's going to be taking the lead here on the presentation for the applicant?
I assume I will.
Okay, Ms. Hagan, the floor is yours.
Okay, so we have come here today to request a variance for a residential deck project located at this address. In essence, we were hired by Adam to construct what needed to be a main first floor deck out of the rear of the home from the main level living space. The house was constructed very clearly to have an exit out of the rear of the home, as you can tell from the many pictures that are submitted to you in our documents. The builders, Ashford Homes, originally had, I guess, designed the homes to sit closer to Cinnamon Street and Cinnamon Lane, and they had to, at some point in the midst of building, redesign or shift the house backwards, which led to the home getting even closer to the rear yard than it already had been designed to be. So I did not know that coming into this. I knew Adam had come to us with this project after purchasing the home as is from the builders once it had been designed. Knowing also that he needed the deck, he had originally, I believe, been proposed by the builder to have a very small landing with steps down to the rear yard, which would have left no space for any outdoor living up on the deck level. I don't even believe it would have been large enough for a grill. I believe that the homeowner or the home builders designed that because they knew to be very small, because they knew that they would also encounter the need for a variance. Ultimately, because this wasn't going to meet what Adam wanted as the soon-to-be homeowner, he just said, please don't proceed with that. So they literally left the door just enclosed with some wood blocking bars, basically, to prevent someone from opening the door and falling out. So ultimately, we came along and we designed a deck that would just go from one side of his property line to the other. We did originally present that to the building department and started asking questions from the original walkthrough appointment with the permit about what we needed to do to address the zoning variance concerns. I learned at that stage that if we were to bring the deck in and adjust the stair location, that we would be able to ask for less variance requests. If we shrunk it down, allowed a 1 foot setback on each side, and adjusted the steps to be what mainly was inside of the additional setback area, it helped to lower our overall dimensional variance that we are requesting today. So we did so because obviously we wanted to be respectful of what was needed, but also be respectful of what Adam wanted and be able to build him a beautiful space that he can use on his new home. So we, in essence, are just building a basic rectangular deck with steps down to his existing concrete patio still. We are going to request a total rear yard setback of 7.96, but I believe the total dimensional setback is 12.04. And we are going to use high and low maintenance materials so that the deck will look wonderful for years to come. There won't be any wood maintenance to be concerned with. We did notice that a neighboring home does have a wooden deck that's most likely fully constructed now. We have some pictures as it was being constructed, very similar setup. Main floor living space, that's a walkout that has a deck constructed at the back of the home, although that home is going to be a little, it's not an exact reference because it is a little closer to Cinnamon than this home is. But ultimately, we believe what we're proposing will be respectful to the home value, to the neighborhood, and it will not affect anything negatively, impact anyone negatively. It's staying with inside property lines, and it does not change anyone's views of side views or affect anyone's rear yards outside of Adams. I believe that's probably about all I have to say. I do want to mention that obviously we could have, just come along and constructed something smaller, just come and built maybe a nicer landing and set of steps with the low maintenance material. But again, one of the main concerns that the homeowner had coming to us was that he wanted space that he could actually utilize and have space for a dining set or a living room set and a grill so that he could utilize the space versus just having steps out of the home.
Got it.
Adam, sorry. I was just going to ask Adam to add anything else that you may think is relevant.
I think you hit everything pretty accurately in terms of kind of how the project came to be. From my perspective, I certainly, from both a utilization perspective as like an outdoor living space, but also from a safety perspective, I thought it's helpful to have that sort of access to the rear yard, which, being the center property, getting down to there is a little bit more difficult. So that was something else that we had brought up. But when they proposed the initial plan after the house had been set back, it didn't seem like something that was particularly functional from either of those perspectives. And that was why I wanted to kind of proceed forward with developing a plan for deck that would provide outdoor living space as well as a set of stairs that would access the backyard.
Perfect.
Okay. I mean, I think it is sort of clear that these were intended to have some sort of rear access. Was a deck ever part of any plans that were?
Yes, if there was, actually, I believe I received it from from the zoning office originally, or maybe Adam sent it to me, but there is a site plan that shows all three of the homes that were designed. Basically, the plot was designed and broken into three. So there are three houses side by side. And then the builder designed all three of them in one sitting. And on that plot plan, it did show, I believe, a small landing. I can't recall the exact size, but I believe it was maybe like 6 by 3 with steps out. But it was, the wording on the site plan was interesting because I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was something to the effects of it wasn't going to be attached to the home. It was like they were, I couldn't even envision what they were planning, but the only design or piece that I saw was just the original plot plan that was made by the surveyors for the builders, showing that it was a very small build that was going to exist.
Gotcha. Okay. So there was a plan for some deck, but just not, just something smaller.
And to add, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
So before they shifted it back, there was actually even a larger size deck that they had proposed. And I think, Jessica, those are the blueprints that I had sent over to you, the pictures that they have provided to me. And then once they shifted it back, it was kind of like essentially almost like a Juliet balcony style, the dimensions of which I don't recall, but it was essentially so that the doors that they had already installed weren't functionless.
Gotcha. Okay. Got it. That makes sense. And this would stretch the entire width of the home and the property. Is that right?
Not all the way. We actually drew it in. So the entire width of the property is 25 feet, and we drew the deck in 1 foot on each side. So the entire extension of the actual deck itself is going to be 23, but 4 feet of that is the landing and the steps coming down on the left-hand side if you're looking at the back of the home. So the north side of the deck. So truly, I believe, based on zoning standards, it would actually be considered a 19-foot wide deck and then a 4-foot landing and steps coming down.
Gotcha. Okay.
The reason they needed the 1 foot on each side. Sorry.
Yeah.
The reason they needed 1 foot on each side is because otherwise it
Trey,
would pass 60 feet.
Trey, hold on 1 sec. That's okay. Everyone, zoning plans examiner Trey Sheldon joining us. Trey, before I get any testimony, I'll need to swear you in, but let me ask one more question. What's the total distance between the rear facade of the home and the rear property line?
The total distance is 21.96. The deck itself will cover 10 of that space.
Gotcha. And the rear setback requirement is 20 feet.
Correct.
So any type of deck
would not have worked.
Space would need some kind of zoning relief. Is that right? Okay.
That was my understanding.
Gotcha. Okay. Trick, do you want to hold that thought while I go to Mr. Purry real quick, or do you want to jump back in?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure, if you want to swear me in, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Just that the entire setback, like if you are over 60 feet in depth, this is what I worked with Ms. Hagan. Originally, the stairs were going back further, so I explained to her to tuck the stairs in so it didn't protrude as far. And then also the other thing is that with the deck, the length of the building exceeded 60 feet, which would require additional 1 foot of setback on each side. But that is obviously not possible for a building that's already been built. That's functionally impossible to do. And so the deck itself just needed to be compliant. So that's why they bumped it in. Also, then it's not touching, that's not literally adjacent to the other people's deck. If one of the other homeowners subsequently wants a deck too, then you would have these things like touching each other practically. So it served a common sense functional part in that regard.
Gotcha.
Yes.
The only other
Let me-
clarification, the only other point of clarification.
Let me get,
Okay.
I'm assuming Mr. Purry is at work. I want to give him an opportunity to weigh in here. He's been waiting patiently. Trey, I'll come back to give me 1 second. I can hear some more. Mr. Purry, what would you like to tell me?
So I am very supportive of Adam and Jessica's plans. And so interestingly, I own the property that's immediately next door. And I'm going to run into a very similar situation as we have a very similar footprint on our property and the house. And so I'm kind of supportive selfishly also because I feel like I'm going to run into the same situation when we want to propose and put a deck in. The thing that I would add would be that that the rear property lines, there's a fence and then there's actually some trees that create a significant amount of privacy towards, I think, the neighbors that are in the back. And so I feel like the deck, even if it's a full-size deck and encroaches further onto the property line, like there still is the capability of the folks that live behind us to have privacy and I feel like we wouldn't be impinging on their property in that regard. And then I think the other pattern or the thing that I was thinking about is that this neighborhood that we're in, there's a lot of tear downs and a lot of row houses that are very similar to ours that are being created. And I feel like this is going to be a kind of a continuing issue for many of these new homes that are under construction. And so hopefully we can kind of set the stage for many of these other homes that are going to come up and kind of make it easier for all the future owners also.
Gotcha. So you think this project will actually set a good precedent for the rest of the neighborhood?
I think it should, David, because everybody that's coming into that neighborhood is tearing down a house and building a new house. And, one of the most important pieces of a new home is your outdoor living space. And, I think it's going to be kind of a continual issue for every home that is constructed because of just the size of the property lots and, the backyards aren't that big. And so I think a lot of people are going to run into this trouble. And I think if you can create a fair and safe system where we can kind of, obviously work around the confines of the variance and what is important from a safety standpoint, but still be able to give, the new homeowners a workable outdoor living space, I think it would really help.
Okay, great. And you don't, as a neighboring property owner, you don't anticipate any adverse effects as a result of this project?
I don't think so. I think the access to getting into the backyard is shared among a lot of the three houses that we have. But I do feel that there is still a need to have an outdoor space. I feel like it'd be, if you go and you look at these houses, I mean, they were constructed in a way to have an outdoor living space. And, we have a double door, kind of a sliding door that was supposed to go out to a deck. And now I just have a kind of a metal bar that we put over it from a safety standpoint. I think just aesthetically, it looks worse than actually if we had a deck out there. I think it'd create a nice community feel. And I think neighbors would interact with us, much more openly and happily by being able to see each other.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. I appreciate your testimony. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Trey, anything, sorry to cut you off there earlier.
Oh, that's all right. No worries. And sorry, I couldn't join immediately. I had a developer of a whole mall thing that was
No
having
problem.
urgent need. So it was a multi-million-dollar
Could you lift
project.
the microphone up a little bit on your?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyhow, just by way of background on this, David, I've done permit review for other properties along this street. As Mr. Puri pointed out, there is a lot of new construction in the neighborhood. Those other properties, for example, Ms. Hagan provided a photograph of an adjacent property with perhaps even more substantial deck. The thing is that the other properties, I think by Mr. Fitzpatrick and a couple of other developers, ended up going with front yard averaging. And so they are much further forward. Like in other words, they only have like a 5-foot front yard setback because they went with the front yard averaging with the adjacent properties, like the existing homes. Okay, does that make sense? And then on this plan, on the plans for the 3 houses in question, really, there are other 2 that are not identical but very similar. Mr. Puri's, and then whoever the third homeowner is, if it's been sold. So what happened here is that there was an architect originally on those 3 projects who thought they had a way forward with a deck on it, who worked with the former zoning administrator, Matt Shedd, and then there was a different architect that came in, and I got assigned the revised permits, and I didn't realize that there was, only in retrospect, once Ms. Hagan put the plans forward, did I do a little digging and realize, oh, they were originally going to do a deck and have the house more forward, but then all I was doing is reviewing plans that showed, that basically there's no deck proposed on it, and I just assumed that they were going to do in order to get in for their permitting for the revised plans, for the new plans with the different architect, they showed a set of deck steps going immediately down. Like, in other words, a landing, and as you will know, David, necessary landings and steps that are uncovered are allowed to protrude 4.5 feet into the setback. And as Ms. Hagan pointed out, this is already got about 2 feet, of space left. It's about 22 feet from that dwelling to the rear property line. So I just assumed that out of these properties that they were going to put a stringer going down, just deck steps going down to the patio below, the concrete patio below. And so I went ahead and approved the permits. And then subsequently, Ms. Hagan came in, and I didn't realize these things were barricaded and stuff, and they'd never completed the stringers. In fairness, I just approved the plans that I saw in front of me. So I'm just letting you know that by way of information, because I think had the developer known all this, it was going to come to pass, they might have moved the houses forward, like, with the front yard averaging. Instead, they went with the base zoning setback of like 20 feet and put these things back, and that it just shrunk the rear yard, like needlessly, I think. But that ship sailed. These homes were already built, and they built them with the barricade across the windows, and it kind of left the homeowners in the lurch. So I just thought I'd explain that way of background, so that nothing really peculiar happened here. It's just that they changed architects, and I think nobody realized that on the new plans that there'd be this implication of not, of having to have relief for a deck because they pushed the houses back, another 15 feet further than the newer homes that I had previously approved.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And we were discussing that before, sort of the origin of those rear doors before you got on. So
yeah, it's kind of odd when you look at the photographs that she presented.
Yeah, thank you for that context, Trey.
You're welcome.
Adam or Ms. Hagan, anything in response to anything you've heard or anything you want to share in closing or otherwise before we adjourn here today?
No, I definitely appreciate your help, Trey, in understanding that original plan. And I think the bottom line is it is a bit frustrating to see that, someone purchases such a beautiful new home and is left with frankly, a situation that really seems a bit unfair. So I appreciate your time and your willingness to hear our case, and just hope that you would, understand and see it from the perspective of what will be the three homeowners. And in all reality, as Trey pointed out to me, the homeowners on both rear sides or ends of this building, of this build, the other two homes that are adjacent to Adams have even more setbacks to contend with. They have side setbacks, it looks like, and the rear setback as well. So I think they're all going to need decks because of the way that these homes were built and designed. And I think the one that we're proposing for 3029 is going to be beautiful and only enhance the neighborhood. So we thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hagan. I think we'll leave it at that. I've had an opportunity to review the application materials and the staff report. Based on that and the testimony that I've heard today, I'm going to approve the application. I need to make that official or formal with a written decision. That is typically what takes me a little bit longer on these, or a little bit more time. So I mentioned 2 weeks in the beginning. I'm doing everything I can to meet that time frame right now. We've been getting a substantial amount of applications as of recent, including I just approved a deck yesterday on O'Brien Street, just a block over, that had similar sort of setback considerations. So I think this is perfectly reasonable for a residential setting, of course. And yeah, so I just need a little bit of time to actually write that out. As soon as I finish it, I put it into a PDF, I put it into an email. Everyone who's in the hearing today will get a copy of it. As soon as it is really just moments after it's finished, you'll have a copy in your inbox. And as soon as you have that, you can work with Trey, and Trey can okay the permitting and get that all taken care of. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to myself. I know that Trey's always willing to answer questions, or if you'd just like an update on the status of that decision, feel free to email me anytime. I'm happy to give you guys a sort of a report on where I am with the status of that. But otherwise, you'll see that in your email within a couple weeks. Yeah, any other questions right now?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks to everyone for being here. I appreciate your testimony. Time. Good luck with the project. Enjoy the summer on the deck, and we are.